Hello and welcome back to the Wargamer and another painting tutorial. This time I'll be showing you how to paint the German M-Class Minesweeper from Warlord Games' Cruel Seas. For this tutorial I'll be using the Army Painter range of paints. The first step in painting your ship is to prime it, and I've opted for the Army Painter's Uniform Grey Spray Primer for this. Now they've done this for two reasons. It gives us a nice grey colouring that we can easily apply our midtones over later on, as well as giving us the base colour for the ship's hull. The first step after priming is to dry brush the entirety of the surface using Stone Golem. The reason for this dry brush is to give the ship's surface a very quick and easy highlight, which will help to enhance the level of detail that we have here. Now to dry brush, you want to dip your brush into a small amount of Stone Golem, then remove most of the excess onto a spare piece of paper or tissue, so you only have a little bit of paint left in those bristles. You then want to lightly drag that brush over the edges, and you should find that the paint is deposited along those hard edges. With the dry brushing completed, we can now start base coating the wooden deck of the ship. Now for this, I've opted for Desert Yellow to give us that light brown colouring. Now when you're applying it over the grey, you'll probably want to mix in a small amount of water with your paint, and apply at least 2 thin down coats. Allow the paint to dry thoroughly between the applications, and you should be left with a smooth coverage of Desert Yellow. With the decks painted, we now want to base coat the lifeboats that we have on this miniature using Spaceship Exterior. Now again, make sure you mix in a small amount of water with your paint and apply at least 2 thin down coats. This is quite a light coloured paint, and to get the best coverage possible you will want to apply a couple of coats. The next areas to paint are some of the darker grey areas. This includes the rails that run down the sides of the ship for the mines, as well as the depth charges and the mines at the back. We want to paint these with a darker coloured grey to help them stand out against the rest of the miniature, which is why I've opted to use Dungeon Grey. The next paint that we'll be using will be used for 2 different areas. First of all, you want to start off by using the Necromancer Cloak on the tip of the funnel. Then, very carefully and using a thin brush, you can start painting the uniform of the crew members on deck. The next paint that we'll be using will be Hemp Rope, and we're going to be using this to paint the life jackets of the crew members that we painted in the previous step. Now again, use a very small brush for this, and I find that as we're painting over quite a dark colour, you will need a couple of coats to get the best coverage possible. In addition to painting the crew's life jackets, you can also paint the canvas covering that's on the lifeboat on the port side of the ship. Our final base coat can be a little bit fiddly, and I would only recommend doing it if you have access to small brushes and also have a steady hand. And that is to paint the faces and also the hands of the crew members, and for this I'll be using Kobold Skin. If you do accidentally overspill onto areas that you've already painted, you can easily touch these areas up using the relevant paint. The final steps in painting our ship are to apply some washes. Now these washes will flow into the recesses and help to improve the definition of the details. Now the first wash that I'll be using will be dark tone ink, and we'll be applying this to all of the grey areas of the miniature. But before we do this, we want to mix in some Quickshade mixing medium. By creating a mixture of 1 part mixing medium to 1 part dark tone ink, we will result in a much more subtle looking wash than if we'd applied it straight out of the pot. The final step in painting your ship is to again apply another wash. Now this time I'll be using strong tone ink and applying it in much the same way as I did before. Instead I'll be focusing on the remaining areas of the miniature. These areas include the deck, the crew members' life jackets, and also their faces. And here we have the completed Minesweeper. You may have noticed a few extra details such as the markings, paint chips and rust which I applied using the same steps detailed in my Cruel Seas extra details video. Whilst I focused on the Minesweeper for this video, you could easily apply the same techniques to other ships in the German fleet. You can find a full list of all the paints that I've used in this tutorial in the description below, along with any other equipment that I've used to create this video, such as my Everlasting Wet palette. If you enjoyed this video, do let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out my Patreon page if you would like to support me in making these tutorials from as little as $1 a month. If you have any questions or just like to chat with others who enjoy my channel, I've set up a Discord server which you can find a link to in the description below. And so the only thing left to say is, thanks for watching, and goodbye.